Barbara was 15 years old when she went missing, following a dance recital in 1999. She was last seen with her babysitter that afternoon, but no trace of her was found after that. However, authorities discovered a troubling diary entry written just days before her disappearance, in which her babysitter confessed to what truly transpired that day. Welcome to YARO Crime. Today, we will be taking a look at the murder of Rachel Barber, who was gruesomely murdered by her babysitter out of even-tempered jealousy. Rachel Barber was born in 1983. She was the oldest of 3 sisters, and her parents were deeply involved in her life, doing everything they could to provide her with everything she could want. Her mother, Elizabeth, and father, Michael, had been married for many years, and Rachel's family life was the epitome of healthy and ordinary for a young girl her age. In 1992 or 1993, Rachel and her family relocated to Mount Albert in search of brighter prospects. The family met a young girl called Caroline Reed Robertson during this period. Carolyn quickly became a family friend, with Rachel's parents frequently employing her to babysit their children. Carolyn grew up alongside Rachel and her siblings, but she was 4 years older and far more mature than the young Barber girls were at the time. Rachel was just 15 years old in 1999, and she had spent the majority of her childhood preparing to be a dancer. She was extremely gifted. She wanted to be a model as well as a dancer. Her life aim was to work her way into musicals all around the world, especially in the United States, because most of her favorite venues and performances were in Chicago. Rachel had become a full-time student at the Melbourne Dance Factory. She was famous for her beauty, popularity, and agility. She was in fantastic shape and was frequently at the top of her class, establishing herself as a world-class dancer at an astonishingly young age. Rachel was a shy young girl who was highly popular at. She didn't take well to strangers and would often seem withdrawn around people that she did not know very well. But she was always very nice and respectable, even though she was quite shy. Rachel had been dating her boyfriend Manny for several months, and it seemed that the two were closer than ever. Despite her timid nature, she had no problems opening up to Manny, who seemed to make it easy for Rachel to just be herself. Carolyn Roberts, the babysitter I described before, was with the Barber family for roughly 7 years. Rachel had grown from a shy young child to a bright young woman, poised for success in her dance career, and she had witnessed it. Carolyn adored Rachel, but she had other feelings towards her. Carolyn was a jealous teen. She had a difficult time dealing with other people's success especially, since she didn't have much going for her at the time. She was a very attractive girl. But Carolyn, who raised the girls for the majority of their childhood, was extremely concerned that Rachel possessed the charisma and magnetic energy that she lacked. It seems that this hostility toward Rachel intensified, evolving from a basic sensation of jealousy, something we all experience occasionally, to something much more perilous and evil. Carolyn aspired to lead Rachel's lifestyle, and if she couldn't live it, neither would Rachel. Carolyn's issues with envy and self-worth would get worse as her teenage years progressed. By the time she was in her mid-teens, she was feeling terrible about herself, and not just in the manner that most teenagers do at some point. It seemed that she had begun to develop a genuine dislike for herself. She didn't look like she wanted to. She didn't think she was smart enough, and she certainly didn't think she was worthy of being loved. According to the people around her, she was always putting herself down, calling herself a loser, unwanted, dirty, or even fat. In fact, when she was 14, she painted a self-portrait with several of these words inscribed in bold letters at the very top. As she got a little older, some of her anger was channeled toward her father. Caroline's father abandoned the family, leaving her and her family to fend for themselves. Caroline would channel her rage into letters to her estranged father. These messages became increasingly venomous, at one point blaming her father for her sense of alienation. Caroline's awful feelings of self-hatred would eventually lead her to plot a heinous act. Her hatred will soon be directed at someone who had nothing to do with her situation. It was March 1, 1999. Rachel's father brought her to a train stop at 9:30 a.m. so she could attend her classes at the dance factory in Melbourne. She left the house wearing her favorite gold jewelry and with only $13 in her wallet. She told her boyfriend Nanny was going to leave after school for a secret job offer that she wasn't allowed to discuss. Even mentioning the job offer to Manny was against the rules, but she thought he needed to know. This secret job was supposed to pay extremely well. This was the only information she was willing to share with anyone. That afternoon she left the dance factory, heading off for this secret location. Her parents had no idea she had plans other than hanging out with her friends after class that day. Rachel was last seen going around the train station with a woman shortly after she left the dance factory. Rachel had not returned to the railroad station to see her father that evening after several hours, and her parents became concerned. Rachel had never missed a curfew before, and she was immediately reported missing. Manny instantly opened up to Rachel's parents and the police, admitting that she informed him about a hidden job opportunity, but that he didn't know anything further about it. As a result, this information wasn't particularly useful in the investigation. Rachel simply vanished from the face of the earth. No further updates would be released until 13 days later, when some shocking and disturbing news would leave the Barber family shattered. On March 14th, police contacted the Barber family with shocking news. Bear in mind at this time, the Barbers had no knowledge the case was being investigated as a possible homicide. Imagine their amazement when officers came to the Barber family's door and informed them that they had arrested a suspect in connection with Rachel's disappearance. They were shocked and couldn't believe it when the police disclosed that the culprit was none other than Caroline Robertson. Carolyn has been a close family friend for over a decade. So how could she be connected to Rachel's disappearance? Unfortunately, investigators' subsequent remarks simply made matters worse. Caroline had been detained because police have found remains buried in a shallow grave near Kilmore and had evidence connecting her to the crime scene. Rachel had been ambushed with a telephone cord and then buried under less than 12 inches of dirt, according to investigators. One of the most surprising developments in this case occurred when the police took Caroline to the station for questioning. Caroline didn't take long to open up. She admitted practically everything. Caroline revealed within a few hours that she had, in fact, murdered Rachel Barber. However, she claimed it was an accident. Caroline claims that she met Rachel that day just after her classes ended. She told police that she had enticed Rachel to come to her apartment for some sort of psychological exercise, although it's unclear why Rachel thought this was a job offer or why she felt she would be paid for it. Caroline allegedly called Rachel over and offered her $500 to participate in a highly confidential survey of some kind, although this was only a rumor. Caroline, on the other hand, explained that the two of them traveled the train together and exited at her flat. When Rachel entered the apartment, pizza and beverages were waiting for them. Rachel had no idea. Caroline had laced the pizza with antihistamines. Rachel became increasingly delirious as she ate. Caroline launched her assault after she was satisfied with Rachel's condition. She informed Rachel that she was ready to begin the psychological survey. Caroline surprised Rachel from behind with a telephone cord after asking her to close her eyes and think of good and pleasant things. Caroline then placed Rachel inside a wardrobe and kept her there for several days while she plotted the following stages of the crime. She would eventually wrap Rachel in 2 rugs and solicit the assistance of an unsuspecting taxi driver to help her transfer what she referred to as a heavy statue to her father's property. Obviously, what the taxi driver assisted her in removing was not a statue. When the two arrived at Caroline's father's house, Caroline took the so-called statue out to the rear of the property, and when the taxi driver left, she buried the remains next to Caroline's old dog Lucy in the family's pet cemetery. She went to work the day after the crime on March 2, but one of her co-workers ended up driving her home after Caroline reportedly looked very ill and wasn't able to function well enough to get her job done. Caroline would call out of work for the next few days as well, claiming that she was sick. During this time, police were hard on Caroline's tail, tracing Rachel's last moments and gathering witness testimony from everyone who had seen her at the train station that day. They discovered Rachel had spoken with her on that day, where they went through phone records. Caroline could have been the last person to see Rachel alive. Witnesses at the railway station reported seeing Rachel accompanied by a plain-looking young woman. On March 12, detectives went to Caroline's apartment and discovered her unconscious on the floor. They discovered Caroline's diary while sorting through her possessions. When investigators examined the diary more closely, they discovered that Caroline had kept comprehensive details of Rachel's recent life and had written down numerous alternative ways in which she planned to take Rachel's life. Investigators were skeptical of these hints and began looking into Caroline's recent movements. The detectives were able to show Caroline's involvement. On October 2000, Caroline opened up to investigators and admitted to taking Rachel's life, even pleading guilty during her trial. During her court sessions, she explained how much she hated herself and wanted to be someone else. She was diagnosed with a personality disorder just before the trial. During her time in prison, Caroline progressively made herself look more and more like Rachel, styling her hair differently, losing weight, and doing her best to become the spitting image of Rachel. Rachel's mother even spoke out about the uncanny resemblance. Our thoughts and prayers are with Rachel Barber's family and friends who have been heartbroken by her disappearance, and we hope that Rachel, wherever she is, gets the peace she has always desired. Thank you for watching. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section below. We'll see you in the next video.